Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Gary Talks. You know, video games have been popular for years. I know I was playing the Atari 2600 back in the early 80s, and it seems since pretty much they were invented, Hollywood has been trying to make adaptations of them in movies and TV shows to various degrees of success. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And the newest video game adaptation is in theaters right now, Borderlands. From that movie, I've got director Eli Roth, and stars Cate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Kevin Hart. But before we get to that, let me go ahead and reveal to you what the greatest video game adaptation of all time is. And it's not a movie or a TV show, it's the song that caused me to put a quarter in the jukebox every time I went to Pizza Hut as a kid. Pac-Man Fever.
I'm gonna eat 'em all up just as soon as they turn blue. 'Cause I got Pac-Man fever. Pac-Man fever. It's driving me crazy. Driving me crazy. I got Pac-Man fever. Pac-Man fever. I'm going out of my mind. Going out of my mind.
Okay, maybe that's technically not the greatest adaptation, but it's one I loved because of just how fun it is. And speaking of fun, before we get into the history of video game adaptations, here's my interview with the director of Borderlands, Eli Roth. Hey Eli, thanks for being on the show.
Hi, good morning, Gary.
I gotta tell you, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, ever since Cabin Fever and especially Hostel, which I think Hostel is one of the greatest horror films ever made.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
But you are primarily known as a horror filmmaker, so what drew you to making a movie like Borderlands?
Well, I love sci-fi movies. I just never had the opportunity, and I've obviously been very focused on horror and branched out into other things like Death Wish and did the kids movie, even though it was a scary kids movie, House of the Clock in its walls. But there's a sense of insanity and just like bad crazy that's in the game of Borderlands that I really, really love. It's very much got my sense of humor. And, I thought the script was great. The project was really fun. I love the world. I love the characters. I wanted to try world building. And it was really great. I had real full support from Randy Pitchford and the whole team at Gearbox. And I just wanted something that was big and fun and nuts, like The Fifth Element or Escape from New York, but something that was also for kids. You have kids 9, 10, 11. You can take them. They're just nothing too serious. Just turn off your brain, grab a bucket of popcorn and laugh and have a good time.
And I mean, that's really all we want from a movie. I know they're getting more and more expensive, but as long as you have a good time, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, this is for, a great time at the movies is something you remember your whole life. So, there's obviously we watch a lot of stuff at home, but there is no experience like seeing something that's on a big screen. And we really got to, world create. I loved it when I was Star Wars and I was a kid and I went to see that movie. I was just transported. So I wanted to, always wanted to recreate that kind of experience.
Same here. Now, I know you've worked with a lot of great actors in your career, but for Borderlands, man, this movie is stacked. What was it like to work with this cast?
Oh, it was so fun. I mean, we were shooting the pandemic, which was crazy because we couldn't really hang out outside of the set because Budapest was on total lockdown from 8 p.m. on. You weren't allowed to leave. So, it was amazing though. I mean, Cate Blanchett and I, we'd worked together on House of the Clock in its walls and Jack Black. And once you have Cate, everybody wants to act with her and do scenes with her. So we got Jamie Lee Curtis and, Edgar Ramirez and Florian Munteanu. And then this new kid, Ariana, she was a kid. She was 13 years old at the time. She's incredible. You just knew she was going to be a major movie star. It was pre-Barbie. So we just, once you have a cast like that, Kevin Hart, it just gains momentum and everybody wants to be part of it. I got really, really lucky.
And I know that you and I are both about the same age and we both grew up with the same influences and love of horror films. So what was it like working with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Oh, it was so fun because I was shooting season 3 of History of Horror at the time. So I got to interview Jamie and specifically talk about Prom Night and Terror Train and ask her about Halloween 2. And then I interviewed Cate for History of Horror, and we talked about The Gift.
Oh yeah, so underrated.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful movie, and her performance is brilliant as always. So obviously, what I love about Jamie is that she really embraces it. She's not someone who runs from her Scream Queen title. And she's just a wonderful, human being. We called her the den mother of set. She's just there taking care of everyone. And she's like the pace car. She just sets the pace for everyone. When Jamie's around, everyone's really chill.
That is great. Well, this episode of my show was dedicated to video game adaptations, some good, some bad. But have there been any that you really enjoyed?
Um, yeah, I mean, I really obviously enjoyed The Last of Us. I thought Fallout was great. Um, but yeah, I know there are a lot of them. There are endless ones, but I think there've been some really terrific ones lately.
Yeah, it seems like for so long every video game adaptation was horrible, but then for the past few years we've been getting some great ones. It's like we're living in the golden age of video game adaptations.
There's the filmmakers that grew up with them are in the position of power to make them, and the visual effects have kind of caught up with the medium, and the audiences for these games have only grown, and the storytelling has certainly gotten more inventing. Look at Super Mario, obviously.
Yeah, well, I do think that we're going to be able to look back on Borderlands and say that it's one of the best video game adaptations, and it's just fun.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for being on Gary Talks.
Take care, Gary.
As I said at the beginning, when I was a kid, it was all about the Atari 2600, and I know the graphics were nothing compared to today. It was two sticks hitting around a little dot, or, these two little stick men trying to fight, and we were like, oh yeah, those are totally boxers. But at the time, it was amazing. And soon, Hollywood was already trying to capitalize on this. And the first thing they did was make some Saturday morning cartoons. I won't say the Pac-Man cartoon was anything to really write home about. The animation was okay and the stories were pretty lame, even for a little kid. But it was still super cool to see Pac-Man on the TV every Saturday. But then in 1983, we got a full feast of cartoons with Saturday Supercade. We would get cartoons featuring Donkey Kong, Frogger, Pitfall Harry, and my favorite, Q*bert. That show only lasted 2 seasons though, and again, we were without any video game-based TV shows. But in the real world, Atari gave way to Nintendo, and its most popular game being Super Mario Bros., which in 1989 led to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which even featured Captain Lou Albano as Mario. Besides the animated Super Mario show, we also soon got a cartoon based on The Legend of Zelda, but we were still waiting for video games to finally make it to the big screen. Now, I'm not going to say we didn't have movies about video games in the 80s. We had Tron, which was basically inside a video game, or The Last Starfighter, where a kid was so good at the video game that he was drafted into an alien war. And we had War Games, which was, playing a game against a computer, or even The Wizard, which was about playing Nintendo. But we didn't actually get a real movie based on the video game until the early 90s with Super Mario Bros. The 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie, directed by Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, is a curious piece of cinema that is way different than the beloved source material. Starring Bob Hoskins as Mario and John Leguizamo as Luigi, the film follows the plumbers as they venture into a dystopian parallel universe ruled by the villainous King Koopa, played by Dennis Hopper. While the movie deserves some credit for its ambitious attempt to bring the colorful world of the Mario games to life, it ultimately falls flat due to its convoluted plot and tonal inconsistency. The dark, gritty aesthetic clashes with the whimsical nature of the games, leaving fans confused and disappointed. Ultimately, it was a perplexing and underwhelming attempt to bring a video game classic to the big screen. Surely, though, with that misfire, the next big video game movie would be better. I mean, after all, it starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. But the less said about Street Fighter, the better. Now, certainly they won't mess up Mortal Kombat. The 1995 Mortal Kombat movie, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, stands as one of the more successful video game adaptations of the time. Drawing from the super popular fighting game series, the film follows warriors like Liu Kang and Johnny Cage as they are drawn into a high-stakes tournament to save the Earth. The film's strength lies in its commitment to the source material, delivering thrilling martial arts sequences and iconic character portrayals the fans recognized and appreciated. The practical effects and choreography were kind of impressive and provided a visually engaging experience that captured the essence of the games. The dialogue was cheesy and the special effects now appear dated, but it all kind of has a nostalgic charm. And it had the soundtrack featuring the now famous techno theme song. It's the kind of movie I didn't love in the theater at 20 years old, but now I enjoy it for the silly 90s movie it is. But without a doubt, the best video game adaptation of this time period was Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. The 2001 film, directed by Simon West and starring Angelina Jolie, is an action-packed adventure that brings the iconic video game to the big screen. Jolie's portrayal of Lara Croft is spot on, capturing the character's confidence, physicality, and charm. Her performance is the film's standout feature, driving the story with charisma and a strong screen presence. The plot follows Lara as she embarks on a globe-trotting quest to retrieve ancient artifacts and prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Lara Croft Tomb Raider is an entertaining popcorn flick that for once successfully translated the essence of the video game to film. Now, before we continue on with the history of video game adaptations, I want to show you one of my favorite interviews I've ever conducted with the legendary horror icon, Jamie Lee Curtis. I have been a fan of yours for so long, and you've done so many different kinds of movies, but I would have never pictured you in a movie like Borderlands. What drew you to it?
There's a line in the script that describes a big explosion, and the way they described it is however much money the budget will allow to make a big explosion. Like it didn't take itself so preciously, and certainly didn't take itself seriously. There was a lot of asides being made to the reader saying, this is a ride, this is going to be really fun, it's going to have like really big booms, and it's the reason I left my family and, kind of at the end of the pandemic came to Budapest, was because the story is well written and is a kind of classic movie, tale.
Tell me a little bit about your character, Dr. Patricia Tanis.
She's funny. She's funny, but she's an odd duck. And in our story, she is the catalyst to go find the vault. They are stymied, and halfway through the movie, they knock on her door, and she provides access, information, expertise, and some humor.
But I mean, she's really just one crazy character in a whole group of them.
It's an outlaw, it's a mercenary, it's a robot, it's a sort of cyborg bodyguard, broken person who's protecting this little girl who's a totally street-fed street rat, and a sort of nutty scientist, all of whom need each other in a codependent way in order to achieve the goal of the movie, which is the goal of the game, which is to open the vault.
I thought it was a lot of fun, but what do you hope audiences take away from Borderlands?
It checks all the boxes. It has pathos, it has humor, it has a lot of action, it has quirky, nerd, fodder. It's got big nerd quotients of cool that people will love. It follows the history of the game with a very sort of reverential appreciation of the game, and yet has created its own existence.
Well, thank you for going a little bit over the allotted time with me today. It's really been a pleasure. I gotta tell you, that was really cool to talk to Laurie Strode. I mean, I grew up with the Halloween franchise, and I've always loved her stuff in horror films. Speaking of horror films, in the early 2000s, the horror video game became really popular. People loved to be scared, and they had the opportunity now to play a game that was scary, hunting zombies or anything like that, with games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. And it wasn't too long before Hollywood took notice, and they decided to start making video game adaptations of that genre of game. In 2002, our old friend Paul W.S. Anderson made the first Resident Evil movie, and while it wasn't a perfect adaptation of the game by any means, it was still a fun, direct-to-video level quality action horror movie that spawned quite a few sequels. And I have to say I liked it much more than the Silent Hill movie, which sort of got the tone of the game, but the plot was just straight up trash. And then, things really started getting bad as the budgets ballooned, but the movies stunk. We would get things like Prince of Persia starring Jake Gyllenhaal. It hoped to be the next Pirates of the Caribbean, but ended up being closer to Cutthroat Island. Then we got Assassin's Creed, which did the worst thing you can possibly do with a video game adaptation: make it boring. And finally, we got Warcraft, which I didn't hate as much as others, but it just felt like we were watching the cutscenes in the video game, and if anything, it made me want to turn the movie off and play a game instead. If anything, it wasn't good enough to be remembered or bad enough to be memorable. Would we ever get a truly great video game adaptation? Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Things are about to turn around as we head into the golden age of video game adaptations. But before we get there, I want to share with you my interview with one of the stars of Borderlands, Kevin Hart. Hey Kevin, thanks for being on the show. Tell me a little bit about your character, Roland.
He was big. He's a big guy in the game. And, you know, when Eli and I talked about the character, I said this is an amazing opportunity for me as an actor because you're going in a complete opposite direction than what the fans of this world may expect or may think Roland should be, or who he should be. And, you know, I'm a man of pressure. I love pressure. And I said, what this gives me the opportunity to do is have a complete shock factor. And here's the crazy part, not for myself, for the audience, because I know what I'm capable of doing. And what I'm capable of doing is over preparing. So I got some serious training. I got really physical. I put a demand on my body where I knew my body would respond. And I showed up with a certain look, with a certain tone, because of my preparation. And it's not the size of the dog. 9 times out of 10 it's the bite.
It seems like you're slowly moving towards more action-oriented comedies over time. Are you enjoying that?
You're as good as the people around you. And in this case, the stunt team's second unit, they set the tone. You know, for us as talent, you know, it's about the people that truly understand this world of action, and it's about them placing you in positions where you can do what you've trained for, and you can also be elevated. And Jimmy's done a good job of that. For myself and Cate, who are doing a lot of action, and they're doing a lot of takes where you're on me and Cate. The stunt team is there to definitely do stunts, which there's a lot of, but there's a lot where you need me and Cate to actually do a lot of the choreography, be physical. You know, they want to make sure that they get those passes. And if we didn't come in prepared or we didn't look right, it would show.
Video game fans are notoriously hard to please. Does that enter into your mind anytime when you're making a movie like Borderlands?
We have such a good cast, such a good cast, man. And I really do think that the people that are fans of Borderlands, that have been there since day one, you're going to be happy. And I think, of course, any decision or any move that's made, you're always going to get doubt. You're always going to get opinions. So it's not about proving people wrong. It's about giving people something good to see. In this case, I can say confidently that they will have that.
Well, I know I loved it. Thank you so much for being on Gary Talks. With computer graphics finally catching up to how great things look in games, as well as, like Eli Roth, people who grew up with these games are now in charge of making movies, we enter the golden age of video game adaptations. No one expected a whole lot from Sonic the Hedgehog, as fans hated the animation in the trailer, and it's not like Jim Carrey had been on fire at the movies. But something happened by the time Sonic was released, and it was not only a super fun movie, but it was one of the biggest movies of the year. This led to not only sequels in the Sonic world, but it paved the way for the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which is now the highest grossing movie based on a video game ever. I didn't think I was going to like it, especially after it was announced that Chris Pratt would be the voice of Mario. But it was a vibrant and entertaining adventure that truly brought the video game franchise to life. The animation is a standout, boasting bright, colorful visuals that are a feast for the eyes. The plot is straightforward yet engaging, filled with action-packed sequences and references that fans will adore, and it has a playful energy that really is just a joyful celebration of Mario's legacy. But it wasn't just on the big screen that video game adaptations were getting their due. Sure, we had Halo, which just got canceled, and Twisted Metal, which I'm not sure if anyone even watched, but we also got the greatest video game adaptation of all time, The Last of Us. The series captures the harrowing journey of Joel and Ellie across a ravaged America. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey deliver standout performances filled with deep emotional complexity and unbelievable chemistry. The show's cinematography and production design are top-notch, faithfully recreating the game's desolate landscapes and haunting atmospheres. The writing is tight, balancing character development with suspenseful, often heart-wrenching plot twists. While some fans may miss the interactive elements of the game, the adaptation respects its source material, while expanding the narrative to explore new facets of its characters and world. And just when we thought that there wouldn't be any other great adaptations, along came Fallout. It's a bold adaptation of the iconic video game series, capturing the essence of its post-apocalyptic world, with stunning visuals and a compelling narrative. Set in a future ravaged by nuclear war, the show follows a group of survivors navigating the dangers of the wasteland. The production design is the true highlight, with meticulous attention to detail in recreating the game's iconic locations. The series boasts strong performances, especially from Walton Goggins, in his Emmy-nominated role as Cooper Howard, the Ghoul. And that all brings us to the newest video game adaptation that has just been released, Borderlands. And here to talk about Borderlands is the star of the movie, Cate Blanchett. We're looking at video game adaptations today. Were you already a fan of the Borderlands game?
I knew nothing. So the whole process of embarking on Borderlands has been a process of discovery. Of course, when Eli approached me, we worked together before and I loved the experience, and he said, "Would you ever?" And I said, "What is this?" And then of course I went online and it just exploded, and I realized it was sort of the king or queen of the looter shooter games, which as soon as I mentioned it to my older kids, they knew all about it, and their friends and friends who play games, and then I just went, okay, this has a huge audience, and I started to play, and I've got 2 left thumbs, and so I kept literally bashing into sand hills and walls, but I found it so fun and irreverent and Bruegel-esque. So it's been a lot of fun actually for me, because it's been a standing start in terms of understanding what the world continues to be.
I mean, you've had so many different looks in your career, but this might be your most extreme. How did you come up with it?
So when playing Lilith, I talked to Morag and to Kerry Warren, who's doing the hair, and to Daniel Orlandi, who's designing the costumes. And obviously there's only one costume, so you've got to get it right. But there's 3 Borderlands. And so you have a bit of leeway. And also what works in a game won't necessarily work on a woman who's shooting a gun in beer tunnels. So how can we make that work physically so that you don't have to visually correct my costume? And so we came up with the idea that that Lilith needs to look sort of blown apart, and so we worked with elements of that and tried to make it its own thing visually, but obviously taking on board the fact that Lilith is a character who people cosplay a lot. She's owned in that way and has been inhabited by thousands of women around the world before I have even inhabited her.
Well, I talked to him a little earlier in the show, and I have to say that Eli Roth is one of my favorite directors. What was he like to work with? He's
profoundly immature, but yet has this amazing knowledge of and reverence for cinema. And then the great thing too, I think, is he's such a buoyant, positive presence on set, and he's very, very good with younger actors, I think, as well. And he's really brought out I mean, Ariana isn't, you know, an exemplary performer. She's incredible talent, but he's able to work with actors from really different reference points and sort of bring them into the same scene and into the same world. And I think that is it doesn't always happen. People think it does, but it's a really, really, really singular skill which he has.
We've looked at some hits and a lot of misses when it comes to video game adaptations. But you guys were lucky enough to have one of the creators of Borderlands on board. How beneficial was that?
It's been invaluable having Randy on set and having his okay with things. I mean, normally you get worried about, what does the studio think about this? Will they be happy? Is the director happy? You know, how's it all looking? I was most nervous about what Randy thought about it all. And then when Christy came, obviously, I was nervous about what she would think, because it's their baby, you know, quite literally, it's their baby. And so to have Randy just go, well, that looks, you know, it's an overused word, but it means a lot to me coming from Randy, the badass, you know, work. You know, when he saw me up there the other day with the flamethrower, it was like, yep, that's good, you got it. Then you feel like you're in the right place.
Well, I've been a fan of your work for a long time. It's been great talking to you. Thank you for being on Gary Talks. I know the reviews have been pretty brutal for Borderlands. And I gotta be honest, I never really played the game, so I can't compare it. But as a movie, it's a lot of fun. If you just want to go and be entertained, I say check it out. And that's all the time we have this week. As always, check out garytalks.tv. I've got links to all my socials. You can message me, let me know what your favorite video game adaptations was. You can follow me on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all those fun things. As well as I have links to all the old videos and versions of this show you can watch. And be sure and join me next week as I take a look at this year's Emmy Awards. I'll go over who I think will win and who I think should win. And trust me, it's not the same in a lot of categories. And I was able to check something off the bucket list as I was able to sit down and talk to one of this generation's greatest actors, Gary Oldman. See you next week.
From capes to tapes, Gary's on the case. He's breaking down each scene, every place. On Gary Talks, he's quick with his peculiar wits. From plot twists to the comic strips, Gary's flipping sick.